November, we are not covering, in my opinion, the northern tier of the county properly. There's nothing, just because I used the example of South Plainfield, just doesn't include South Plainfield. South Plainfield, Denellen, Middlesex, Sparrow, the northern part of Edison, the northern part of Woodbridge, there's nothing close or convenient. And the guidelines for early voting sites are both convenient to population centers, but also distances. So we need something in that part of the county, and it doesn't have to be an 11th one, something else could be moved. And that's, so for the primary election, I don't necessarily care, but before the general election, a couple months before the general election, we have to do something further and get some coverage, because I don't think that's appropriate. I would say, perhaps, I mean, for now I can accept the Woodbridge site where it is, that we're doing that stuff, but the general election we have to do something that covers that part of the county. The other thing is, the New Brunswick site needs a lot of work. I don't know if anyone else, people that were there on the primary, it's much too small, and we were sort of actually lucky that there weren't that many people that came out, because if there were more people that came out, we would have had perhaps major problems. So and we have to find a place where if we end up being happy with it, that we can keep it there, so voters can ultimately continue to know that that's where the early voting site is there. But if we can find some other place in New Brunswick, I'm fully happy with that, but it's got to meet our requirements. If not, maybe there's something in North Brunswick that's close, if we want to do that part of it, or if we want to give up on it and take that the New Brunswick side and put it in the northern tier of the county to cover it. We have to do something here, because it's the primary, it'll probably work because there's not many people going to come out. But after that, it doesn't.
Okay. You began by discussing the Woodbridge site, but I didn't hear you say anything. Are you okay with it, or you had a problem and I didn't hear it?
Well, the Woodbridge site it's listed as being in Colonia. It's not in Colonia, it's in Woodbridge proper.
Right.
So it's a different area of the township.
But they've already used the site.
Yes, I was there in November. It's the old...
right.
Okay. But when I saw it on a list, I was not familiar with the name of this thing, because it was a brand new name. Okay. And that was in fact, the early voting in November was the first function that was held at that location. Correct. Colonia is at least the northern part of Woodbridge, and that would have been acceptable to me, and I thought that's where it was. Well, I obviously found that it wasn't, so we have even less coverage in the northern part of the county. If it was in Colonia, it would be at least the northern part of Woodbridge. That's all.
Okay, and then you made a comment about the New Brunswick site being too small.
Yes.
Was that seen by us and checked?
It's
not this year.
I'm sorry.
Physically,
no, I'm asking.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, not this year yet. I haven't.
Not this year. Okay.
No, physically it fit everything, but it was stuffed in. Right?
Which election are we discussing?
The
regular election?
No, it's nothing to do with the regular election. This is the early voting. New Brunswick has the early voting site.
So it was stuffed in with early voting?
Yes, that's
and
what we're talking about.
And we didn't check?
No, they did.
Last year, and last year we felt it was accessible. It was tight.
No,
it was a little bit tight, but we were kind of under the gun.
Yeah. No, accessibility was not, that was the issue. The issue was too many machines, too many everything in the square footage of the location. Everything was really scrunched. So it didn't even surprise me. It didn't surprise me that there were arguments amongst poll clerks there, because it was a very small area, and that added to.
You think that had something to do with it?
I don't know if it had to do with anything with the arguments, but it wouldn't surprise me if it could have, because everybody was very crowded in.
And then my last comment to your comment was that you mentioned moving a New Brunswick one to North Brunswick, which surprises me in terms of you're now dealing more with numbers for the north as opposed to the convenience of the voter?
There were 10 sites, we have 25 municipalities.
But I mean, I heard
Right.
you correctly.
So if you would, what I did say was if there's another location in New Brunswick that would be accommodating, with one that will work for us, i.e. a larger site, possibly better parking, I'm fully happy with that. But if we can't find a site in New Brunswick that meets those criteria, then we're gonna look for someplace else, because because this place, especially to the extent that early voting will presumably or probably increase over the years, this site is no good. It's too small, and there's no parking. So that's why I'm bringing it up. For the primary, for the primary, based on the likely turnout on these things, I'm not going to argue over it, but we have to do something before November.
Well, if I hear you correctly.
So we'll accept this for the primary
I
then,
can do
and then,
The 10 locations for the primary,
Right.
investigate other locations to present to the board for discussion at a
right,
later
yeah,
time.
he just said that.
Yeah.
He would accept it for the primary.
Yeah. But what I'm saying is there's an issue, we have to do something in northern tier of the county anyway, but whether that we move to Brunswick polling, early voting somewhere else is a different question. But to the extent we're going to keep an early voting polling place in New Brunswick, we have to find a better place.
Thank you.
That's all.
Thank you.
Any other comments, commissioners?
Before I can, do you want to make a motion and do that,
Oh,
or?
for acceptance, yeah.
For the primary election. Was that motion made and seconded, or?
I'm just pointing it out.
We need a motion.
Did you make the motion that we accept?
I did not.
I move that we accept these locations for the primary.
Okay, second?
I'll second it, the primary.
Roll call, Maria?
Chairman Engel,
Yes.
Commissioner Frankel,
Yes.
Commissioner Katz,
Yes.
Commissioner Moskowitz.
Yes.
Commissioner Jones.
Yes.
Now that we accept it, just a clarification, that means it's the same 10 locations as we used last November, except the Old Bridge one is moving to the Old Bridge Library. Right?
Yes, that would be fine.
Chairman,
Yes.
can I ask for a reference map in the future? Perhaps, just with like locations, just so perhaps I can
I
visually.
have one, I'll send it, it was before you came on.
Thank you very much.
Valerie, that
I'll
map is
update it
so,
with-
no, but that map is so small, or things, you can't really, you can tell what municipality it's in, but you can't tell where the location
Can you
is.
zoom in?
And that's the-
Can I zoom in?
It's Google Maps.
All right,
No,
I'll zoom in.
no, I can read it.
I'm kidding.
All
Yeah.
right.
For Chairman
Little
Jala's
joke,
benefit.
No, I
Unaccepted
can read
at
it.
the meeting, I apologize.
This was not a question about being able to read it. Small in terms of,
It's Google Maps, so if you expand it, it usually shows the streets, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll just,
Oh,
what you
see?
sent, I thought you sent us, I thought it was a PDF that you sent us. Doesn't matter. All I'm telling you is.
well, if you have a Google Maps, please send it to all.
When you get it, if it's what I got, it's not gonna, it's gonna tell you, I think you probably know where all the towns are.
Yeah.
But that's about as far as you got with it.
Right.
Okay. Next item on the under new business, primary poll location. Location.
Well, now,
We have the list.
we have the updated list from Valerie regarding the polling locations and the ones that stay the same, and then the ones that are seeking some changes. I know, Valerie, if you just want to go through the items for clarification.
Commissioner comment on the
We're
location?
gonna go over them.
Do you want to just approve as a whole all of the polling locations that have no changes and are back to pre-COVID locations?
That's mixed. Oh, yes, well, that's fine.
Okay.
Which means the one on the bottom.
On the
one's
bottom.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll move that we accept the polling locations, the 2022 polling locations, which are the same as the 2019 pre-COVID, which are at the bottom of that page, starting with Carteret and ending in Woodbridge in that list.
East Brunswick, districts 37 and 40.
But a second.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I second.
Too far away.
A second on that?
Yes.
Roll call.
Chairman Engel,
Yes.
Commissioner Frankel,
Yes.
Commissioner Katz,
Yes.
Commissioner Moskowitz,
Yes.
Commissioner Jello.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, do we have any other comments on?
Well, we've got to go for the other ones. Those were, we just approved the ones that didn't move.
Oh, okay. All right.
East Brunswick, there's 2 districts that are still not allowed back into their regular polling locations because of COVID, and that's Society Hill East Clubhouse 1 and 2. So these districts, 37 and 40, are going to remain at Hammershaw School.
Were they in Hammershaw for November?
Yes.
Okay.
So that one is okay.
Then that one I have no objection to.
Highland Park.
We're going to circle back to Highland Park. We're going to go down to Middlesex Borough. There are 2 locations that are currently either under renovation or has a roof leak. So the clerk is asking to move District 3 to the high school, and District 4 and 10 that were in the rec center be moved to the American Legion, which is right next door.
To the center.
To the rec center, yes.
From the rec center to the American Legion.
From the rec center next door to the American
Right, but
Legion.
no, the parking lot is right next, that's right.
Oh, okay. I don't know.
What's
And then
the
wait,
proximity of the high school to the library, or reverse?
I do not know.
Okay.
And
Only because you mentioned the next one was right next door, and that made sense, so now I'm just curious in the first one.
Okay.
It's a little, it's actually across the street. I would say, I think it's 26 Mountain Avenue. You would have to go down a little further, I believe.
So is it on the
Trying
same,
to think
it's on the
from-
same street?
It's next to, the rec center was next, literally right next door to the municipal complex. And then I believe you go out and you make, it's been a while for me. I just know that the high school is across the street basically, but whether it's right or left, I wouldn't know off the
But
top of my
it's
head.
close enough.
But yeah, it's not that far away, absolutely.
but you have more in Middlesex Borough.
Correct. So District 6 used to be at the firehouse, and she's looking to put that in Hazelwood School until she can find a permanent new location for that district. And same thing with District 7. It's Pierce Firehouse. She wants to move that to Mauger School until she can find a permanent
Are they both
location.
out of those places because of still COVID restrictions for both of those locations?
No, she said they're not adequate spaces with the new machines.
Not, yeah, they're not. I used to inspect them, those 2 firehouses. We just barely coaxed them through. With the, now that we need electricity a little bit more and things like that, it just wasn't, it's not viable for what we do now.
I'm a little surprised, I'm sorry, Madam Chair. May I make a comment?
Sure.
I'm a little surprised that the schools are open to the election sites. I'm thinking that they're more negative, right? 'Cause
They
you
don't have a choice.
It's 2 different. You have a
Depends on-
choice, you always have a
Depends
choice.
on the municipality, too.
You always
Some
have a choice.
municipalities,
Yeah.
some are, some aren't.
So they're gonna close it, or?
No, I don't think so. They'll probably just give us a room or something like that.
They all have separate entrances into the gyms, so we're not really having voters wander through the school for both.
Well, I know you try not to do that, but
Yeah.
it's still strangers coming into a building.
That's true. I get it.
So the only change, Valerie, just to be clear, the only changes
Breathing on.
in Middlesex Borough are because of renovations and such, or because of COVID.
Yes.
And from what you're telling me, the municipal clerk and both party chairs don't have any issues?
No.
Okay, so I don't have any problem with that either. That one.
Okay. Any other comments? All right. Let's have a motion.
Wait, we have other towns,
Yeah.
2 other towns.
Go ahead.
New Brunswick.
New Brunswick 5-3 is usually Providence Square, still not open due to COVID, so they're going to remain at the Hungarian Heritage Center.
Same place as in November.
Yes. South Amboy would like to make a permanent request to use the middle high school and senior center amongst their wards and districts.
Why? It's not a COVID issue, right?
No.
And have the chairs been referenced?
Yes.
Talked to? Both chairs will know that, not just have they been told, do they have any
Yes.
comments? They're
A letter was sent and there was no comments, no replies, everybody's in agreement.
Okay. If they're in agreement.
Spotswood?
Spotswood, we have come to a decision that Districts 1 and 4 should go to the Knights of Columbus, District 2, the Polish American Club, Districts 3 and 5, the VFW, 6, the Municipal Building, and 7, the Clearwater Village.
And that would be an increase at the polling location.
Correct.
And I know the chairs went over this one, I'm not sure I wanted to, but I got involved into this one, and I think everybody's happy with this finally.
Are you happy?
Well,
If they're happy, I'm happy.
well, can I ask a question before that? I'm going to ask our staff. I mean, our staff,
Yeah.
Spotswood is not a large town. Okay, now they're going to 7 polling locations when we had
We have
5 locations.
and 7
5.
districts.
And we used to have,
It used to be 4, and then they went down to 2, and now they want
And
to
two
go back up
was,
to 5.
that was not good.
I mean, what Commissioner Katz is that they were looking for 6, and they came to agreement on 5 locations.
Good.
so are we, are you
Yeah.
okay? I want to ask you, Stephen, you okay with that?
That's it.
Okay.
Oh, Steve?
I ran it through Valerie, and we think it's good on our end.
Okay.
I'm never against less polling places, you know, because you never know any kind of issues you have, you can always move them around, which is good.
All right, back to Highland Park.
Highland Park, I think we are almost figured out with that. We were having some issues with Irving School, which hosts 4 districts in their gymnasium, and trying to find somewhere else to put them if we couldn't get into the school was very tricky. So we are hopefully going to have an answer with that soon.
What's this doesn't reference, is there some problem with the synagogue?
I'm sorry, they're closed for COVID, and then they have a Jewish holiday on that day. So they most likely will be a polling location
Have they been
For
a
the
polling
general.
location pre-COVID?
Yes.
pre-COVID, yes.
Okay, so this
They've
is
been
for
closed
COVID-
during
for
COVID.
COVID purposes,
And then a holiday.
yeah.
I'm thinking.
I was wondering if someone could explain to me what the process is for letting people know what the new polling locations will be. That's done, I
So
assume, by the municipal
once they're
clerk.
approved, the clerks then send out letters, correct?
Well, if it's a rewarding redistricting, we do. If it's a polling place change, they're supposed, the municipal clerk is supposed to notify.
We would provide the labels of the voters impacted, and then they would send out a letter to those voters.
So it's really it's just now?
Yes.
So there's no one there, like if a voter was to say, hey, I've been voting here for 15 years, and they show up there and it's closed, there's nothing to guide them to where the new location is?
We would for, you mean for which, were we talking Highland Park specific, or just?
I wasn't being
Any of them.
specific, I was just being general, just to some place that has changed. I mean, you know.
Most municipal clerks will put signage on the location that's changed.
And then reference the new location, which is the best part.
Where did the Highland Park, if the synagogue closed for COVID, and it was closed for COVID before, where were these polling locations?
The rec center.
And is the rec center available?
Yes.
And is there some reason we can't put
It would be a lot of districts.
too many districts?
There would be
That's right,
6
that's it.
districts.
Oh,
And then
I
if we
remember that center.
if we
Yeah,
lose
it was
Irving
small to
School,
begin
we
with.
have another 4 districts to replace. So
Yeah.
we were able to get a firehouse that can hold 2 districts in place of the synagogue for this
Yeah,
election.
the rec center is pretty, not big. That's between Raritan Avenue and the next street. Is that the rec center? Got it.
So basically, you could take the stairs from the municipal building, down the stairs, and then it's that parking lot behind it. It's like a senior / rec center.
Okay, maybe I'm thinking of a different place.
They've held almost all their districts there when we've had issues in the past, so, I mean, it's, you know, Joan always made it work if we needed it. No, I mean, they wouldn't do it for a general that way, but we did it for a primary, I believe,
Yeah,
one time.
so we're looking for this for the primary, but are we looking for this for the primary or for the primary and the general? Actually, we're looking at places.
We were looking for the primary, but hopefully the congregation's available for the general, and we'd be able to
And that would be
distribute.
back to where people were,
Yes.
19, okay. So we still need to confirm a location for 2 of the districts?
4.
It's really just a high school, we just really need to firm up.
Yeah, Irving School.
Yeah, there's,
So I don't know if we'll have We have to do this before May 15th, so we can probably approve it at the next meeting. If you need it approved beforehand, I guess we can do it by.
I mean, if you want.
I hope to get it squared away
If you would
before
like
that.
to approve it as proposed, and if something changes, then we can come back to you and say
But
that.
do we know where we're really, all I have is a question mark.
If you
Where
want
do
to go
you-
through
I
the
don't
districts.
have where she signed them.
Can we vote for Highland Park by email?
Yeah, if we don't know where we wanted to put them yet, then we can do it. If you want it done early enough so the local clerks can send out stuff earlier or know earlier, then when you got an answer, just get it to us and we can approve it by email.
Wouldn't it be easier just for us to do what was suggested, which is to approve it so that we can move ahead?
But we don't know what it is. They don't know where they're gonna move it to.
I know, but so let's approve, let's make final where we're at.
Yeah.
And then get,
For everything else, for all the other towns.
well,
I'm not gonna approve something where we don't know where we don't know where we're gonna approve it to.
Let's have a motion for East Brunswick, Middlesex Borough, New Brunswick, South Amboy, and Spotswood.
I move that we accept all of those as described on the sheet, which
Second.
except for Highland Park.
Second.
Mohammed second.
Okay, roll call, Maria.
Chairman Engel,
Yes.
Commissioner Franklin.
Yes.
Commissioner Katz.
Yes.
Commissioner Moskowitz.
Yes.
Commissioner Jowett.
Yes.
Oh,
You know, like master poll workers?
Yeah, it was an item that was on the last agenda that kind of got tabled, but to kind of raise it, just for a discussion or however you guys want to do it, is as one of the items from the general election that we discussed with clerks and clerks and mayors and elected officials and poll workers and yourselves as well as the county would be expanding the poll worker program that we have in Middlesex County. As you are aware, and maybe Commissioner Jowell is not aware, is that two of our municipalities have a master poll worker program, Woodbridge and Edison, where they have poll workers who work on election day and are master poll workers who work with the clerks and travel around to the different sites and kind of triage issues as the day goes on. So what I might be suggesting is an expansion of that, either in that framework or in a framework where it's maybe a seasonal master poll worker program where we do the same thing, maybe retain them for a longer period before an election so that they can maybe assist clerks with the election preparation, beforehand, maybe help set up polling sites before an election and on election day. Kind of their duties are expanded so they are kind of maybe a point of contact for poll workers and conduits to our office during election day. And so either it was a proposal either to do it as a pilot or an expansion for the primary and see if there's a process we can come up with that would maybe work for a general election expansion.
I'm not sure.
Go ahead.
I'm not sure I'm clear with what you're saying. Are we looking to expand this to all the towns?
I would say at this point, expanding it to all the towns before June would be, So I would say if I can maybe talk to some clerks and identify ones that might be interested, and again, in coordination with county IT in terms of, coming up with a process, trying to develop people who are more trained than the existing master poll workers that can really be.
I mean, I know we have a lot of small towns. We don't need a master poll clerk in Helmetta.
No.
So, I mean, because what we were doing, it looks like two largest towns. So I'm not sure how far down the list we want to go.
I mean, I would broach it with the clerks and see if there's interest, and if there's a mid-sized town or a larger town that's underneath that Woodbridge and Edison, maybe if we can work and kind of at least explore it.
I would probably take some baby steps.
Take the baby step for the primary and then see for the general if that's something we can flesh out a
If you
little
talk
bit
to
more.
the clerk in Edison, she's very pleased with the method.
Yeah, no, I
absolutely.
I have to take credit for this because I brought it back from a national conference in terms of the master poll clerk. So I certainly have no objection to that. It's just a question of how far we want to go with that.
Why don't we look at it as a pilot
Yeah.
program like you
Yeah.
suggested and pick one or two towns
Yeah,
where the clerks
additional.
and just let's see if we can walk.
But
maybe,
let's
yeah.
mix the sites
Right,
then
larger
too,
towns, right.
because the smaller towns like Metuchen is certainly positive too.
Are you suggesting we go to a touch?
No, don't be silly, I would never be pushy like that.
And that, I mean, that.
What's the other question, what do you envision as jobs or duties of a master poll clerk pre-election versus our staff?
Well, again, it's, you know, some of the challenges for the clerks in the mid-sized and larger towns is the polling location preparation. You know, sometimes, you know, when a poll worker walks in, you know, all the materials are kind of right there, and they have to do the setup, you know, on election day. And some clerks go out to the sites, and again, it depends on their staff availability and how many they have and how many polling locations they have. And they'll do the setup of the tables and the chairs and the signs and everything else, so that when poll workers come in, all they have to do is really turnkey the machines and poll books on. So.
The clerk usually directs them.
Okay, I'm just trying to figure out what we're.
Yeah, so I mean, things like that, and then also on election day, you know, things that normally.
No, I understand the election day comes.
And may I, I'm sorry.
Sure.
I'm sorry, I'm so used to jumping in. One of the other things though, if you do even have the title, you know that the persons working the machines are going to treat you somewhat differently if you come in as the master clerk than just a person who happens to know the machines or the technology end of it, you know. And in Metuchen, for example, we have worked with a woman who generally works with our poll clerks and added another person. And because of a simple suggestion that I was surprised at that hadn't been done anyway, notes were sent out from the two persons responsible to every voter in our town to fill our,
Poll clerk position.
thank you, our poll clerks, and the responses was wonderful. There are a lot of people who really don't pay as much attention as you think they do. So we're kind of filled with that. I know you just made a face, and I'm sorry about that.
No.
But we filled all of our positions, and I think that that's a very positive thing. It was done in just this little communication. So if you have poll clerks, they could be coming up with suggestions such as that. That would help all of us fill our spaces better. Just thought I'd throw that out.
My face.
Yes.
My facial expression dealt with the fact that it's not unusual that people are unconscious about things that
Oh,
they
that
shouldn't.
part.
That was all it was.
Well, I just wanted to remind you that we are
No.
always filmed in
Yes.
case. Thank you, Madam.
Any further comments, Commissioner? Pat? No? Okay, let's move on to the reports. Steve, do you have a report?
It's just small stuff. We are actually out conducting handicap accessibility for all the polling places. We're just going through each, and also while doing that, we're checking outlets, putting that in the notes. We are refortifying under Valerie's direction that all schools, if it's possible, if they have numbers above where their entrances are, we're putting that on the reports as well, so this way Valerie is key for that information. So just simple things like that. That's basically it with that, so they're busy doing that. We just installed little clips on the, instead of, we had the indicator light that was, it used to be held on by stupid zip ties that would fall off or slide, so now we actually have clips that we put on. We noticed when we got the 184 brand new machines that there was a nice little clip on it, so I called up and got that for free, and I believe they have different types of Velcro for the bottom two where the curtain is, so I'm working on getting those for free as well. That's basically it. There's not a ton. The elections went off very well with the voting machines. There were no critical errors, no machines shut down. Just a couple of simple phone calls and corrections, and it worked out really well for the last couple of elections.
Right.
Thank you, Steve. Linda?
Hi, thank you. I don't usually read statistics, but I will tonight because the staff's been working on a lot of projects. So we received the inactive voter report from Inc. It was those voters who were inactive and haven't voted for 2 federal, they were moved to the deleted status. Then we received from a failed geocode report. I said state, but it was from Inc. Approximately 1,000 records were checked manually and have been corrected in the database. Staff also looked at 18,000 records for the congressional district shape files. They were verified manually and they'll be updated in the production environment. Currently, we're working on the awarding district changes from rewarding. Staff is working on verifying in the test environment the changes prior to production. So we received a list of 40,000 voters, so I was able to narrow it down, remove duplicate, came up with the unique addresses of 12,000, but they're being checked manually, one by one, in the test environment before it goes into production. Then anybody who had a district change will receive notification from the board. I listed all the upcoming dates for New Brunswick, including the review dates and the hearing and all that stuff. But page 2, if you can just go to page 2, where it says primary election June 7, poll worker lists are due tomorrow. I gave you a list of what we've received already, and I'll update you as we go along. I did put in your packet the early voting summary that Gwen's been working on for the poll workers. If you can look at that, that's as of yesterday. There might be some more updates to it today, but that was as of yesterday. I don't have anything else, that's it.
Before we switch over, just so to be clear, there are 2 meetings in connection with the New Brunswick School Board election. There are 2 hearings that we have, and they're going to be at their office. So we should put down, I guess, April 19th at 4 p.m. and April 25th at 4 p.m.
Correct.
Right?
Yes.
Okay, thanks, Linda.
I'll rely on my written report. That's just 2 items in addition to that. One's just a reminder to Commissioner Katz. I guess in your comments you wanted to bring up the IGO conference.
Yes.
And then aside from that, it's just for the minutes, just ensuring that the commissioners approved the moving of Perth Amboy drop box from the public safety building to the YMCA.
So,
Yeah.
you want me to bring up
Sure. Are you finished, Tom?
Yes.
the conference, the International Association of Government Officials, IGO conference is in June this year in Indian Wells. It's in California. I recommend, to the extent people can go, that we go. And I've always brought back something that's been useful for us. Some of it we've used, some of it we haven't used. So I don't know who can go. I have a little issue if we still have to wear masks on planes, because if I wear a mask for half an hour, I get a headache, and if I wear a mask for an hour, I get a splitting headache. So a multiple-hour flight, I don't even know what works. But I would suggest people, Benadryl, I don't know. I suggest people, it could be. I suggest people take a look at their schedule and see if they can do it. We've had funds in the past for doing this.
Yeah, we would just submit it to the county commissioners in a resolution to be approved, depending on who would be attending.
Wait, when do they need to know?
Well, the question is when we don't do pre-funding. We typically get approval from the county, and then we lay out the money and get reimbursed with a voucher.
Or we would just have to submit who would, how many and what names would be attending. So, I mean, if you want Maria to send the IGO to the
Maybe you should send it.
reminder.
Because I'm not sure everybody got it. Maybe instead of call it the conference or the information about it, so people know the dates and what's happening, and so they can decide whether it makes any sense for them to go.
Confirm to Maria whether you would be attending or not, then we would put in a resolution.
California, of all places.
It's south of Los Angeles and north of San Diego, and it's inland. That's what you're at. You're at it.
Okay, we're at commissioner comments.
Commented enough.
Public comment. 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioners. Charlie Cradaville from New Brunswick, editor of New Brunswick Today. I wanted to ask about the move of the Perth Amboy drop box. How was that approved?
Via email to the commission.
Okay. Is there a statute on the books in New Jersey that allows this board to make decisions via email? Any enabling legislation that makes that possible, or do these decisions have to be made in public meetings compliant with the OPMA?
Not always possible.
I would argue that these days it's more possible than ever because the OPMA was changed to allow remote meetings. You already have the capacity to hold emergency meetings on short notice. You can hold emergency remote meetings if necessary, but I don't think that it's appropriate to vote via email. And even if that was the practice, it doesn't make it legal. I believe voting by email is illegal for this board and you shouldn't do it anymore. I wanted to follow up on the Spotswood closures and consolidation that happened last time. We're hearing today that it's required by law for the board to approve any changes to the polling places for general election. Through you, Madam Chair, can you ask Mr. Lynch, were the changes made last year done in accordance with the law, or was there no proper vote of this board?
I would have to research that, I don't remember what happened last year.
I believe the issue's been brought up by Commissioner Katz, and Mr. Lynch has addressed it slightly, but I want to know, was that done appropriately, or was that done without proper authority?
The changes in Spotswood?
Yeah, for last year.
Another word, I assume that's what your comments are.
Which one?
I've already expressed my opinion at the last meeting. I'm not going to go in. I personally am not going to go in.
Understood, yeah, you've been very clear. Since the administrator is here, could you please ask Mr. Lynch to clarify his position and whether those changes were done properly or whether a mistake was made or an oversight?
We'll have to look back through the minutes. I'm not aware, I don't know, I'm sorry.
Okay, well, I would hope that the commissioners would share my concern about their authority being usurped and, polling places being closed illegally without authority. I asked at the last meeting, still haven't got an answer, rewarding how many voters or residents were moved from one ward to another in Piscataway. It sounds like the board's charged with notifying the voters, so you must have the number of voters.
I think from the list that was generated by the state, it's between 18 and 20,000 voters. I think some of those are deleted or inactive, so it's kind of hard to put a particular number on it.
And that's just for Piscataway.
Just for Piscataway.
18,000 to 20,000 voters. That's got to be a third of the town. I mean, that seems like the board, the Rewarding Commission made a huge mistake if they were trying to minimize disruption. A third of the town changing from one ward to another, it didn't have to be that way, did it? That is very much cause for concern. And on that same topic, I have a document I'd like to share. Can you please take one and pass it down? So, this is a desired ward of Commissioner Frankel. This is Ward 1 of Piscataway. And Commissioner Frankel sent this file to Remington Vernick, your engineers, and said this was his desired ward. For one, he also sent one for the other 3 wards as well. And I would like this document to be entered into the record. I'm happy to share the other ones if you like, but this is just an example of what was sent. You can see all the calculations on the right-hand side. It's a sophisticated piece of software obviously used to create this map to the exact specifications that Mr. Frankel wanted it. And I want to draw your attention to these pinpoints on there. Who lives at these houses? Why are individual voters, individual families being targeted or considered by Mr. Frankel in his map here? And in particular, the one on 8th Street. Can Commissioner Frankel address this and tell us whose houses these are and why these were on his maps that he sent the engineer?
No. Time is up.
Declining to comment? Okay. A second bite at the apple, please.
Yeah, you can come back for 3 minutes.
Thank you.
Nobody
Unless
else.
anybody else wants.
No, thanks.
So yeah, deeply concerned about this. I know I asked again at the last meeting, which other towns did Mr. Frankel propose a map for in his capacity being on the rewarding commission? I have reason to believe the Monroe map that was adopted was submitted by Mr. Frankel. Madam Chair, can we please hear from Mr. Frankel whether or not that's the case, whether the Monroe map was also submitted by him, or is it going to be a secret who proposed that map? It wasn't proposed by the engineers, correct? The Monroe map was an additional one. Maybe Mr. Lynch could tell us.
Do you have any comments on the Monroe map?
I defer to the board commission.
I can't answer that. I have an answer.
Okay. This is a familiar pattern. It's very concerning to me that, I keep coming with the questions and the answers aren't here. It's one thing if you don't have them at your fingertips, but I asked at the last meeting this question, and I feel like it should be public information who made the proposal that became the law of the land and the new map that's going to be in place for nearly a decade. Finally, I want to ask about an ordinance on the books in Sayreville. Borough of Sayreville, I believe, prohibits the business administrator from having other employment. Of course, Mr. Frankel is the business administrator of Sayreville. Of course, this is employment. You're all paid, I believe, in excess of $60,000 a year for your service to the residents of Middlesex County. Can Mr. Frankel please address whether he got some sort of waiver or exception to that ordinance, or is he in violation of a Sayreville ordinance by sitting on this board?
Well, isn't that a question for Sayreville?
Question for Mr. Frankel. I've emailed him several times. Has he received the emails?
Have an answer.
You're in the wrong purview, sir.
Okay. Well, you can feel free to stop by after the meeting if you want to just give me your answer. But I am concerned about that too, and that's all I have today. Thank you, Commissioners.